Well, good evening, everyone. Here we are at the Sunnyside house, the Sunnyside LRT station right there. And the sky is actually looking kind of brighter than it has all day, even though it's currently 9:15 p.m., which means it's about 15 minutes to sundown here in Calgary, Alberta. You can see some of the lights on. The lights are actually producing quite a bit of illumination here. But yeah, we just had a fully rainy day and extremely windy. Apparently the wind was gusting up to about 80 kilometers an hour. I planted some clover here. I think I see some of my micro clover that I planted starting to come up, which is rather exciting. Things are greening out. The hedge is coming back. Pretty soon we won't need that white picket fence. And here's the Mugo pine. This thing I pruned back pretty aggressively, and I actually took some of the prunings from it and put them in these raised garden beds over here. And here's our microgreens, planted extremely densely. So we've got a couple varieties of radish here, and some arugula and some kale microgreens that, once those get above the surface of this little planter here, it's going to be time to harvest them. Here's my raised bed full of transplants. I actually covered a lot of these today with buckets and then weighed them down with some of these rocks over here because I was just a little concerned for them. They were getting buffeted by the wind. They were getting all kinds of rain dumped on them, which wasn't exactly preferable in my mind, although I may have overreacted a little. Here's some marigolds, tarragon, sage, dill. Got some lemon balm in here, some licorice, mint, chamomile, basil, some parsley. These radishes, not looking too happy. They were started indoors and just legged out way too much. And when something legs out like that indoors and is just screaming and stretching out for the light, and then you try and transplant it outdoors and water it, it's kind of game over. There's something to be said for giving it the best start possible indoors with adequate lighting and ventilation and airflow and setting up a fan kind of idea. That's what I'm trying to say, because if you don't give it those conditions, they just won't be ready for the big bad world out there. Here I got some beets, a variety of brassicas here, and kale, some spinach, and a variety of lettuce mixes. And some of these are kind of lettuce and brassica mixes. So exciting to see those popping up. Now these are radishes that were direct sown. So it's interesting to compare, the vitality and the beauty of these radishes that were direct seeded with the radish transplants, which again, they kind of say is a no-no. I might pull these up. There's a few spinach transplants in there as well, but the spinach transplants aren't really doing too hot either. Probably for similar reasons. They just weren't started very well. Here we've got a late spring garlic, and I planted onions and potatoes along here, and you can see all the white crystals. I believe that's either perlite or vermiculite. I need to get that straightened out. But I just threw some Pro Mix BX, which is actually a soilless potting medium, on top, as a little bit of a moisture retention layer and a somewhat inert layer. It's not mucky, it's not going to generate rot, but it is going to allow some nutrients to trickle down and hopefully, serve as a little bit of a moisture retention layer. Here's some potatoes I planted recently. You can actually see some of the sprouts sticking up out of the ground. I don't know if I should hill these up a little bit more. I probably should, and I could have stood to plant some of them a little deeper, but time will tell. I may still get some decent potatoes. These are onions and chives here. This raised bed here is looking beautiful. It has nothing in it yet, but I set up these teepee style trellises, and this was reinforced and built from an old planter I was given. But here I think I'm gonna have probably some perhaps some pole beans. Definitely I'd like to have tomato, zucchini, cucumber, possibly some pumpkin, But you know, with the pumpkin, it just needs so much space. I think I might do well to find another spot for it. These are some perennials that my landlord planted a little while ago, and they're coming back up. These shrubs are doing well. And over here, we actually have 5-gallon pails filled with more seed potatoes that I put in there that had sprouted out very, very well indeed. Perhaps too much, but again, time will tell. This arbor is something I installed recently. I'd like to have probably pole beans, maybe the pumpkins, but you know, pumpkins in this part of the world, in this climate zone, are kind of crazy. So we'll see what happens. In here, this is actually an old phone booth, but I've got some sweet peas in here and some actually edible peas as well. So I'm gonna have to train them out of this structure in order to get them to climb up this old vintage telephone booth, and that should be fun. Oh, what else can I show you? You know, I planted a whole bunch of wildflowers down here actually, and they'll be coming up. A lot of these are meant to be, you know, there's some butterfly milkweed, there's some beneficial insect blends, things like that, to attract those pollinators into the garden. Over here we have some coriander, cilantro. It's kind of coming up, you can kind of see it. And then I've got also a variety of different colors of sunflowers, some red and yellow sunflower mix, so that ought to be awfully interesting to see how that develops. I mean, this is crazy right here, you know. Trampoline was installed by my landlord on Friday. He brought that in. And this garden is kind of, you know, I'm probably going to be spending a lot of time out here. This design came together pretty organically, you know. It was kind of just one stage at a time. I had a rough idea of kind of a simple grid layout with some, you know, some avenues in between, roughly wheelbarrow space and more. And actually I laid down recently some leaf mulch that I gathered from around the community, just to serve as kind of a, you know, I'm thinking it'll probably make it so I don't have to do as much mowing and weed whacking in around here. You know, I'd prefer not to be even having to come in here with a line trimmer or nothing like that during the summer too often. I'd rather just lay down a mulch layer, and you know, I could always order some brown wood chips and get those thrown down over top. That might look really nice. But this leaf carpet will be nice, and I don't know, it's basically like a little compost layer. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm stepping on earthworms right now. But, you know, I imagine that'll be really good for the grass. Here's a little something I threw on here. I still got to kind of rig this up better where it's going to drain nicely. Got my hose hookup, hose attachment, and rain barrel. Although you can see it's not hooked up to anything. But I did fill it with water just from the hose. And so that faucet is still useful. Here's a couple tools over here, and this is my compost bin. And I don't know, should I pop the lid on this guy? I mean, there's not really a lot to see at the moment other than yeah, and it's a little dark in here, but compost coming together. You know, it was a little warmer earlier on. Now it's the temperature has gone down, which I don't know how to feel about that. Could be a good thing, maybe not. These tires, you know, I'm thinking maybe put some potatoes in here, or if not potatoes, then tomatoes, I think, because they would like that heat from those black tires, I imagine, that insulation, and I could just kind of keep hilling those up or keep adding to the height. Maybe coax that plant into growing more fruit than it ordinarily would. And here is just kind of backup storage area under the deck. I actually cleared a whole bunch of material out from under the deck, and a lot of this is sort of like a scrap area. This is a scrap pile that I've just got covered up to keep it somewhat dry, but I'm hoping I can use some of that material for more garden infrastructure projects, because the next step that I have in mind is to install cages and some kind of superstructure around the garden beds to pest proof them and to protect against extreme weather, which we got a sneak peek of what that feels like today. But in the event of hail or frost, high winds, you know, a real squall, real deluge, anything like that, I would like to be able to protect my investment. These are some sunflowers that I transferred into containers. We've got, I believe these are a variety of lettuces. I labeled them, but sometimes, you know, things get away from me. It's easy to get ambitious with planting indoors, and it's just so fun. So I've got all kinds of stuff, little seedlings coming up here, as well as some more mature herbs that I potted up recently, and they're fully hardened off. More seed potatoes, and these are actually some drawers that were given to me from an old IKEA dresser. But I took them, reinforced the bottom with some more wood, and then painted them white. And I chose kind of a silly day to paint them white because it rained yesterday and it rained so much today. You know, the white paint is actually kind of just dribbling off of them and leaking out onto the deck. So I'm gonna have to deal with that at some point. But yeah, that's kind of the scoop. Some nice patio furniture out here. These were what I used to cover things up. I actually threw these buckets on top of things just today, just to protect it from mostly the wind. It was really my concern. You know, first year gardener. So it'd be really nice if my first beautiful plants that I love came to fruition, and I guess I'm doing what I feel like I need to protect them. This actually installed this. It's a dummy cam. But it, you know, one thing to kind of ward off folks who should not be ambling through here and snooping around. So that's an added layer of security. And you know, around here, it never hurts. The LRT station is right there. And my backyard is right here. Sometimes folks come wandering through here, and I know that because I've observed evidence of it before. And I just don't particularly like the thought of folks coming through here and feeling like this is a thoroughfare or a garbage bin or a hangout zone, which is kind of how they were treating it before these white picket fence sections came up, because that hedge got trimmed down to the ground so an arborist could come in and deal with this little tree here. There was once a mighty tree here, but it got hewed down to the ground because it was causing problems, apparently. Well, it was leaning dangerously, I guess, was the deal. So yeah, that's kind of it. You know, I'm relieved that that it's finished raining for today. It's really nice out. It's cool, damp, and the rain is subsiding, and the skies are clearing. And tomorrow is another day, another full day of gardening. Always plenty to do, and I've given myself kind of obscene amounts to try and accomplish out here. So this is Derek signing out for now, and until the next update, shalom.